Greetings. Welcome to another episode of Art Matters with Wayne Quackenbush. I'm Wayne Quackenbush, the president of the Portsmouth Arts Guild. We have a gallery in Portsmouth, Rhode Island at 2679 East Main Road, where we show local artists from the tri-state area. And today we have a special guest, artist Kurt von Erickson, and I've met Kurt many years ago when he was quite the maven for comic books and weird movies and all things H.P. Lovecraft.
We played a lot of vampire back then, a lot of card games.
The vampire collectible card game, and you also participated in some of the drawing marathons that I used to hold and continue to hold occasionally across Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. You have a kind of a unique story. I know you're a very prolific artist, or have been over the years, and the first thing I want to talk about is the long-running series of alien creatures, mutations.
Right. So my main idea is aliens worship cartoons.
Aliens from another planet.
Aliens from another planet. So the idea is, and this is an actual thing, is SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Yep.
They beam music, movies, cartoons into space.
Okay.
We don't know where this stuff goes. So it reaches a civilization.
Okay.
Eventually. And these civilizations start worshiping what they see. They don't understand it, though, because what makes Earth so fascinating is we have an imagination, and we can create movies and music, and and that's what makes us so interesting to the alien species. Mm-hmm. So what they try doing is they try constructing what they see from these transmissions. They don't understand cartoons.
Using gene technology.
They're doing experiments on their own people. Yeah. They're preparing an invasion of planet Earth. And that's where the idea eventually goes off into, is it ends up on Earth and it's a mess.
Yeah.
There are these deformed mutants running around, and that's what I draw, is these creatures, and I started doing the landscapes too of that planet.
Okay. Well, we can start by looking at some of the creatures, and you can talk about their creation and the medium and all of that good stuff. So bring up something.
Well, first I want to start, this is the 24-hour comic that we did. It was done in a 24-hour time period. It's the very first thing I really sat down and I think marathon-wise did at the Annex.
Yeah.
So, it kind of just goes through all the different.
Okay, that's a non-human language I see there.
There's a lot of it's sort of a kind of a nod to H.P. Lovecraft, because I'm a huge fan of his work.
Well, being from Rhode Island, how could you not be?
How could you not be? Right, exactly. So, it kind of draws off of that, the mysteries of space, the unknown. I've always been kind of fascinated and stuff like that.
You were saying just yesterday you watched From Beyond again.
From Beyond, and I was thinking about it that morning, which was insane that came on television.
Of course.
I mean, they don't play that movie very often on television, so, I thought it was a good omen.
Yes.
So, but yeah, this is originally where I came up with the idea for, let me just skip ahead, for Aliens Worship Cartoons. This is kind of where it was conceived, right here. That is the original panel that we had done.
Probably 6 or 7 years ago now.
Yeah, this was 2011 that we did the 24-hour comic. And then it was sort of a natural progression into just hanging out at the Annex and drawing more characters.
You've also participated in some of the pop-up shows, and you've had prints made of some of your stuff.
Right. We had a T-shirt done at one point.
Right.
This T-shirt I'm actually wearing here was done by Mr. Wayne right here himself.
Oh, that's the first time any of my artwork has ever been on the show. How about that?
So I thought I'd wear it in honor of of Wayne. So we started going to a natural progression of color with the characters, and we started getting a little crazier with the idea.
And you've also kind of branched out over the years. You also do music.
Yes, I've been recording. Well, I've recorded music for a number of years at home. I've recorded hundreds of songs. A lot of them haven't even seen the light of day. Nobody's really even heard a lot of the stuff.
But where can they, if they wanted to listen to some of your music, where would it be?
I have a SoundCloud. It would be under Kurt Von Eriksen. It's really the way to find all my stuff on the internet is just to search for that handle. Kurt Von Eriksen,
no
right.
spaces and the D before the T.
No spaces. I don't think it'll make a difference search-wise, but yeah, that's where you can find most of the stuff. But yeah, the recording has slowed down some years, just I think because I did so much of it at a certain time. And then the thing with me is if I'm not interested in doing something, I abruptly stop it.
Right.
And that's kind of how I've always been. If I'm not interested in what I'm doing, I'll just abruptly stop doing
Now,
it.
for the music, you're following in the tradition of artists like Daniel Johnston.
Daniel Johnston was a huge influence on me, both his art and his music, I think, and his do-it-yourself sort of attitude, recording music at home. So I definitely gained a lot of inspiration from just listening to his music for a number of years, and got the privilege to actually see him live. So that was great. But yeah, he was a big influence on me.
And what about visual artists?
Visual artists, Roy Hayes. You introduced me to Roy Hayes a number of years ago, and somebody I wasn't even aware of.
He was an underground cartoonist.
Underground cartoonist in almost dead on style as mine. And I had no idea the person existed, and I think you brought it to my attention. The works of David Lynch, more particular Eraserhead, was a huge influence on me.
I can remember back in the day going to see Eraserhead at midnight shows every Saturday night.
That's right. That's right. You would tell me about that. I think at one point they had people wearing masks.
They handed out masks. Back in the heyday when people actually went to the movies and enjoyed a cultural experience.
Right.
Now you can continue to show the artwork.
So this is like still progressing more into the color of the characters. Originally, we do a lot of the black and white stuff, but we're going more into color now.
Now, you've also started doing some things which there's a certain fascination with older technology, and you've been playing with old video game console program, Mario Paint.
Right, Mario Paint I've been using, it was on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in the mid-90s. And it was basically, it was ahead of its time because it did a lot more than even MS Paint could do at the time.
Yes.
It was very advanced.
You could repeat images.
You could repeat images. You're doing everything essentially on your television. So you could even put a VHS tape in and record what you were doing, which was awesome. I used to do that a lot when I was. You could record the process
and the transformation.
I wish I could find those old tapes of me doodling on the TV. That would be great. But yeah, I've been doing that recently on Twitch. I'm a streamer on Twitch. I do speed running, competitive speed running, and
you need to talk a little bit about Twitch, what Twitch is, because.
So Twitch is basically, it's a streaming service where gamers can. They get together, they broadcast their video games that they're playing, and they find an audience that way, or they do what they call IRL streams, where they're just talking to the camera, or they're doing something
creative. It's kind of like a live podcast.
Yeah, it's a live podcast, essentially. Yeah.
You do that too. Cool. I mean, you play games, and
I play games competitively, and I hold a few world records. Most notably, I hold the world record in Karate Champ. For the
world
NES.
Record Karate Champ.
World Record Karate Champ, yeah. I can beat the game in 8 minutes and 53 seconds. So the world record was 9 minutes. So just to show you how competitive it gets, where it just comes down to seconds.
So it's like your life goal is to do a less than 8 minute Karate Champ run.
Right. Essentially, yeah. So and then this here is just not to skip over the video game. This was actually the first issue that we did of Annex Comics.
Well, it's the third issue, but
Well, there was the first issue that I actually had the cover and
Right,
you know
yes.
it was the back cover and the
now,
front cover.
traditionally you've always done the
Always done the back cover, but with this one
Yep.
we got the front cover as well. And this one's special to me just because there's a number of artists that I respect that.
Well, we've never talked about the magazine before, but that magazine represents artists from all over
All
the
over the
country.
state and the country,
Well,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
so from California to New York, and
Absolutely, yeah.
you've always had the back cover. Due to time constraints, there hasn't been a new issue in about 3 years.
3 years,
we've
yeah,
got,
but it's
we actually have new plans to start publishing again, but that's a whole other story. More artwork.
more artwork. This is one we did. This is an original T-shirt idea. I don't think Wayne was super fond of it though. It
Well,
was,
that's a portrait of me,
actually,
right?
yeah, it's a
That's a
it's
Lovecraftian
it's a
portrait.
Lovecraftian portrait of Wayne with some tentacles coming out of his face. Yeah, good fun. And then the natural progression into landscapes, where
That's-
we're doing landscapes of the home worlds.
That's the land, the planet where the.
This is their home planet, and then we kind of go into the.
Now that's actually
more elaborate.
I believe crayons on cardboard. So
Right,
you're
right.
working
So
with the
it's
texture of the
cardboard.
parallel lines.
Yep.
And also the funny thing is, even though we don't have examples of your Mario paint, but the lines in the
the TV,
cardboard
yeah.
pieces seem to
kind of-
reflect like an old tube TV. So
it does, yeah. It's
everything is
very aesthetic.
very, very, very connected, and the whole otherworldliness of it all. What are your plans for the future?
So recently, I started doing art again. I started drawing again after probably a few years just not drawing at all.
You will also you have a show that's current in the place that I have in Newport,
Right,
and
right.
That inspired you to continue or begin new projects. I know you did a whole series of Universal Monsters.
Right. Well, that was more of an exercise where we were kind of just getting into the swing of things, but we're going back to the characters now. This is part of this is brand new stuff that I've been producing, but it does fall in line with the gallery that I have up now currently.
yeah,
So
and-
it's the same
and,
format. And
I also showed you a really wonderful Don Heck drawing of a werewolf from a
Oh, yeah.
pre-code horror comic. That
yeah,
was
I wish I
pretty
had that one
inspirational.
with me, but unfortunately that one's up in the gallery, and I didn't do any prints
yeah.
of that one. That was that was just me messing around.
Yep.
As an exercise. But I think that was the first thing I had drawn after the 3 years of just not doing anything. So, it was tough getting back into the swing, but once we got back into it, it was it's just like it's like riding a bike.
Well, I promote creative exercises that people do daily.
Oh, yeah,
and-
you've
and
been doing that
I'm-
for a very
I'm
long
not,
time.
Right now, I'm not really a practitioner of that philosophy, but I tend to spend more time promoting other people's work. And to me, this is all about connecting to a bigger world, and you're like the literal example of that. I mean, you're using your imagination to download things from not only the past, like H.P. Lovecraft and
Yeah, I mean,
and
right down to the
1990s video technology.
Right down to the paper I use. This paper's from the 50s.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
This paper right here.
And you're
so-
also using the paper in the sketchbook that was made by monks.
Yeah. This paper here that I use is actually it's from the Lokta plant,
Yep.
and these are actually this paper is crafted by the women in the villages,
Yep.
with the monks and.
Yep. Well, Kurt, we've run out of time, but I really want to thank you for coming down.
for
This
having
has
me.
been illuminating and eye-opening, and thanks for
It's been
appearing.
great. Thank you very much.
Hi, we have an artist that I've been familiar with for a number of years here today, first time on the show. Susan Bennett, I met through a mutual friend, Ricky Gagnon, who used to host a gallery show in the juvenile prison suite, I guess you'd call it, the ACI.
Yeah.
And his venture, which continues to this day in another area, is called the New Hope Gallery. And Susan bought probably one of the first pieces of artwork I ever sold, which is currently in circulation all over the place. I just am completely floored by the stuff that she does. So Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And
yeah, your artwork. That's how we that's how we met. It was your Batman.
the Wind Tunnel Batman,
Love that.
which
Striking
in a strange
fear.
way kind of reflects what you do.
Yep.
I know that originally you were from Ohio, and we were just talking, and you spent some time in Philadelphia, and you studied at RISD. Now, what did you major in?
I majored in apparel design and got a BFA in that. Did that for years. Was a director of design for a couple of divisions, sportswear.
Yep.
And then a friend of mine called and was like, I have this opportunity to do some decorative painting. Can you come and help me? And so I did it.
Is that where you learned the skills of creating the finishes that you
Yeah,
do?
finishes, paint, just from going from that kind of
Why
from
don't
drawing.
you hold one of your pieces up,
Yeah.
because I want to introduce what you do. It's a little, keep it parallel, like
Parallel. Okay.
pointed at the camera, you can
There
see
you go. Oh yeah. Is that
when he
right?
has it focused.
Yeah. Where's the?
Now, let's talk about this piece first, because this piece is, to me, epitomizes what you do. To me, it's very attractive as far as color and subject matter, but you do a juxtaposition of this toy thing over top of some kind of queen, and it has equal parts attraction and repulsion to me.
Right.
And that's what I think makes what I see of yours great for the
thank
most
you.
part.
Yeah.
Now, talk about this piece as far as concept goes.
Well, I think, you're definitely right about that, like attraction versus repulsion. I think, as far as what I'm influenced by or interested in is like what both sides of the coin, and the fact that it's like, oh, this looks really beautiful, but what's the flip side? And, as we were talking earlier, growing up in a farming community, it's like everyone thinks cows and sheep are first prize at the 4-H, but they're really for sale and going
Yeah, we
to
don't like to
slaughter.
talk about the meat aspect of all that.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's life and death and birth and that kind of stuff. So that's always been kind of this running theme.
But there's a specific thing about this, about the you were talking about a kind of a series on, was it femininity or?
Yeah, these were all, I did 4 of them, and I did them for a show, and they were pretty straightforward. It's like the same girl painted 4 times, and just kind of watching to see how they came out, and
Yep.
they all come out differently. And then I got them back from the show, and I wasn't happy with them. I'm like, whatever. So
Well,
I
because
started,
they were an exercise.
right.
Yeah.
Basically, I think most of this is to a certain degree an exercise, or at least, it's the beginning approach.
Or an exorcism.
Right. Yeah, it's cathartic.
Yeah.
So it's just looking at things like what would be interesting to me. I mean, if this is so pretty and standard, it's like what happens if I'll sift through images or ideas or things that I see or collect.
And it's all in the juxtaposition, right?
Yeah, and it's like, well, what would that look like? Or if I put that on there, or what if it, it's off to the side, or it feels uncomfortable in its placement? How does that look? How does that feel?
Yeah, it's not only the subject matter, but it's the composition, because
Yeah.
this monkey thing is right in the middle.
Right.
Well, let's go on to the,
Do you want the
let's,
Bowie one?
yeah, we
'Cause
could
that's
do,
part of
we
that.
could do Bowie.
And see, and then this one's really
Bring the other one down.
is what bring it down here.
Yep.
Yeah, this one's like easier to understand, but also it's kind of like along that.
Well,
same.
to me, that this is a kind of a tribute too, because I remember you painted this right after his death.
Yeah.
Which I think we're all still feeling that, but that's a whole other story.
Right.
And again, the same woman in the background, and then David Bowie in the front.
Like why? And I'm like, oh, well, this would look good. What does this look like together? And you know,
But it's the color scheme is similar, and it's just, it's very sweet but very jarring at the same time. Now, speaking of jarring, we have to get to
I'll take this one now.
one of the
Yeah.
subjects that I've always been accused of, and people continue to this day sending me clowns. Now, this is kind of
I love clowns. You and I talked. I mean, I think that's one of the things. Like you and I love clowns.
yeah. Well, because clowns represent the ultimate thing to most people. Clowns are delightful and fun, and
First
and
comedians.
kids love clowns, but also, as of the 1980s, as a lot of things,
Yeah.
clowns became very dark and scary, and ultimately, the problem is that clowns have freedom, and clowns can do whatever they want, and consequently, you can either be afraid of them or be pleased with them.
Right. Well, that's also like a choice. I mean,
But
you
this
know,
is
what's
a
the
comment on,
conditioning?
I mean,
of-
is he taking a selfie?
Right. So I was working on these over the summer. I had taken a course in doing plein air down
Yes.
in Provincetown, and so I was trying to work out and trying to understand. It's a departure from this really tight, meticulous way that I work,
Yes.
and so I was. The instructor had a knife that he was using. And so I thought, oh, I'll try
A
using
palette
it.
knife,
Palette
not a
knife,
butcher
yeah.
knife.
Well, close
yeah.
enough because I threw it
Yeah.
at the wall. But it was really just, it was difficult. It was really hard. And I would just set this goal for myself, like, I'm going to try to figure this out and get it to some place that I
Also,
like.
Did it help you loosen up at all? Or,
Yeah, it did. You know, after going through a lot of pieces, it was frustrating. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, look, I get to see something differently than the way I normally approach painting.
Yeah.
And so then when I did this piece, I was like, oh, it's missing something. You know, I go back to that juxtaposition.
Now you have a
And I went to
border
clowns.
that's different colors. I see black and orange. Did you purposely choose that, or was that originally how you set up the canvas?
Oh, the original setup was to start with orange.
Okay.
And then I started.
Did you do a base coat of orange on the as an underpainting?
Yeah,
yeah,
as the
I
underpainting.
love doing that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that was it was great. And then when you start getting involved in clouds, and then you start seeing purples, and just all of the way color relates
It
to
also
itself was
it
different.
makes things pop too.
Yeah.
I mean, there may not be anything left, but I can see some of it there. But
But there
it'll
are other
always be there.
ones where it does
Yeah,
pop.
so let's continue on with, what do you want to do? You want to do some of the graphite, or are we going to look at the paintings still?
It's up to you. Yeah. So then, like last year, I was not bored with painting, but I had just hit a plateau with it, and I thought, well, you know, I'm going to start drawing again.
Yeah, so
And-
you're achieving things with graphite that's really just takes an incredible amount of patience to do for me. But
Yeah.
I think it's probably, there's a meditative aspect to it, of just like that constant scritch on the
Yeah,
paper. And
yeah.
it must take you hours to do that.
I-
I'll tell you one quick story about, you had a little show in my place
Mm-hmm.
in town, and there was a beautiful drawing of a woman in lingerie.
Oh, yeah.
And-
Cheap shot.
and And I had someone come in saying, "Oh my God, I've got to have that piece. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." However, the funny thing about it and not so funny thing about it was that the woman had no head. So the guy
Wow.
saw this beautiful woman's body without a head, and that was definitely a comment on something. Because they always used to do that.
Yeah.
And again, I digress, but you have a lot of influence from advertising art, and you'll
Well, it's a big influence, I
like
think.
1950s advertising illustration.
Yeah. Well, it's a big influence from the standpoint of like what was going on. It's like women had a certain amount of independence before the men came back from the war, and then they lost that.
Exactly.
And they ended up in suburbia, and it's like, well, where do we go from here? You know, you had a taste of freedom.
Well, I mean, this
the
guy
advertisement
is the, well, I'm interrupting you,
No,
go
that's
ahead.
right. And the advertisement was all geared towards, you know, like your hopes and dreams are now
Back
a
in the
new
home,
back in the home, involved in a new refrigerator
in
and
the
entertainment.
kind of bondage that you were used to before you had the taste of freedom.
Which a lot of the earlier work that I had done was, you know, which was girdles and underwire, you know, that kind of.
Restraints. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I find that fascinating because it's a part of a culture that we, like, you know, part of our culture, the iconography that we use to identify with, but it was also like, it's driven and geared towards. So cutting that woman's head off, even though she, you know, and a lot of that piece was cut off too because she was in a boxing ring.
Oh, I didn't
So
know
it was,
that.
that's why it was called Cheap Shot.
Oh, I get it.
So it was
Yeah.
me being
So you're
tricky.
working with the titles does everything too. But
Yeah.
even this woman here, I mean, she's got a gleeful, well, smirky look on her face, but her irises are different sizes. There's something really wonky about that.
Yeah, I love that. I love
I've seen you
painting.
do that before.
Right, and you know, there's a painting at the RISD Museum by what is it, Alice Neal, and Alice Neal never
I love her
really.
self-portraits.
Yeah, I do too, and
We got to keep moving because we're getting
so
close.
she was always pushing that boundary and trying to, even instead of having this perfect
Well, and
portrait.
then it's the warts and all aspect of it. She was unrelenting in outlining what you would consider, what some people would consider her
Beauty.
defects or
Right.
beauty. Yes.
Right, like,
but
oh.
that's what makes your character. So.
Yeah.
And again, the pencil drawings of the graphite, which is, I mean, just looking
It's
at
a
the
sketch,
texture, I
right?
mean, you're bearing down on that paper. I mean, you're subjecting it to your will.
Yep, it pretty much is. This is newer,
That's
but it's
brand new.
yeah. This is like out with the old, in with the new, being tricky. Old, you know, there's old advertisement of this couple playing tennis in the background.
Oh, sweet, yes.
And then I just whited it out.
We
and it'll
probably
just,
have time for one more thing, so choose
Right.
wisely.
ah,
That's a page.
this portrait satchel page. This was just more of listening to his stuff.
Oh yeah, his podcast and how people were afraid to face him. And
They were crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. So
well, anyway,
that's that.
Susan, we've run out of time, and we could talk for another hour. at
I
least.
know. We
But
always can.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming, and this has been great.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And that wraps it up for another episode of Art Matters with Wayne Quackenbush. Thank you for joining us.
Born broken-hearted on a Sunday morn. Spent a lifetime being battered and torn. Seemed every time I think I'm falling in love, an intervention comes crashing from above. Why can't I be loved? Been wrong more than I can count. A trail of tears more than I can surmount. Too much for